What does it take to land in the drink? Cirrus are weeping, but in a good way. And whoops, do we really need paperwork for this? You're watching fullflap.tv. G'day, I'm Vicky Ferrer and it's Australia Day. More on that in a second, but first, Chelsea Sullenberger is not a name many people knew until last week. The captain of Flight 1549 from LaGuardia, New York to Charlotte, North Carolina is now a hero, and rightly so. Not only did he bring an Airbus A320 with no working engines back down to earth, but he also pulled off a feat few have achieved. He landed a passenger jet on water. If you're not a pilot yet, you might want to know what happened. So do we, but we've got to wait for the full accident report for that, but this might help. On takeoff and for the initial part of the climb, he's at full power. We've all done that. As he hits the birds, he might notice his engine instrumentation giving him some serious vibration warnings, and then obviously he gets a big loss of power. His pilot training kicks in, and as there are procedures for double engine flame out or failures and complete loss of power, he and the first officer quickly put the training into action. The A320 becomes a glider, and as with every aircraft, they maintain the glide speed, keep the altitude, and then glide to a safe landing area. Admittedly, a fast-flowing river isn't ideal, but he landed the aircraft with such a slow speed that some passengers said it just felt like a hard, normal landing. So a bath for the Airbus, but despite being damp, all the passengers walked away. What can we say? Congratulations to two fellow pilots and the whole crew for a stunning job. What have this year's new Cirrus and Cessna got in common? They've both hit the town dressed to impress in the past week. Cessna renamed its low-wing single the Corvallis. Apparently, the name is based on a town somewhere. The 350 and the 400 TT show between 190 and 235 knots on the clock. Meanwhile, Cirrus have added the TKS Weeping Wind de-icing system and windshield fluid de-icing upgrade. Yes, a single-engine piston aircraft that cries. Together with larger glass cockpit screens, full autopilot and a new top-of-the-range turbo, it's an aircraft that delivers everything a boy racer wants. Although with the added cost, most boy racers will probably have to stick with this. Would you rather fly an Airbus or Boeing? If you're an airline pilot or want to be one, it's likely your boss wants you to strap on an Airbus. Last year's figures had the Euro manufacturer setting a new record for itself, delivering 483 aircraft, 30 more than it shipped in the previous year, and that also means 108 units more than Boeing. But we're curious, why is it that most airline pilots seem to want to fly a Boeing? Is it the silly plastic pull-out tray? Is it that Airbus has a mind of its own and flies you? Or is it that current Airbus pilots are fed up with flying a plane with a flight sim joystick rather than a proper control quadrant? Let me know. Coming up, will the new US president get a new European aircraft to replace Air Force One? But first, it's Australia Day. Well, it is if you're watching on Monday the 26th of January 2009. Hello, if you're in the future. So we thought we would get an Australian on the line and check out air safaris down under.
Whether you're from America, from the UK or Europe, I mean, it's one of those places that holds a bit of mystery. It's got the strange animals. You've got the big rock in the middle. You've got an Uluru, or Ayers Rock as it's called. A lot of diversity. A lot of people don't realise the north of Australia is covered in rainforests. Right. And that 3 months of the year, a lot of the cattle stations and things up there are completely isolated from the rest of the world. Personally, I love the coastal flying. I was just down there in December and I flew down the east coast and then straight across from Sydney, straight across to Adelaide, which was flying across, you don't get much more barren desert than this place called the Hay Plain. But then I was fortunate enough, we flew over to South Australia and then tracked the entire south coast basically from the middle of the country all the way down through the 12 Apostles, which is on the southeast coast in Victoria, right? Across where Melbourne is, so we could see Melbourne off in the distance as we're flying across their airspace, right across the tip of their airspace. Then we went entirely up the east coast, all the way back up to Sydney, and it was about 14 days, and it was absolutely just spectacular landscapes that we covered. There's a lot of dirt fields, a lot of farmers, cattle stations, all have their own field. Well, by field, that may be the main road that enters their home, and they call that their runway. Okay, well, we've actually just relocated our facilities down to Bankstown, which is just outside Sydney. Yeah. It's got 3 parallel runways, which is kind of unusual. It's probably the busiest general aviation airport in the country.
More on that in a few moments. Oh, and don't forget to sign up for our weekly email with lots of behind the scenes news. There are plenty of places on the website to do it. Okay, so this wins the most unlikely to happen ever Story of the Week award. Airbus wants to offer the new US president a special A380 Super Jumbo to replace Air Force One. The firm's chief executive, Tom Enders, says it's not a completely absurd idea. That's what he thinks. The A380 carries as many as 840 passengers normally, so there's plenty of space for a decent-sized toilet. With Air Force One currently at Boeing, somehow us lot at the fullflap.tv office think that Obama will have a bit of a Lincoln moment if he goes Euro. If you thought all the recent biofuel tests were just scientists having fun, well, the Air Transport Association says they'll be certifying a 50% bioblend in 2010 or 2011. The fuel would be derived from algae, camelina and switchgrass, but if you like the word jatropha, as I do, you'll be pleased to know that it's likely to be used first commercially. In a moment, why doing the paperwork helps, but first, part 2 of our Down Under interview for Australia Day, looking at air safaris.
How does it work then? I mean, if people come to you for an air safari, what does it actually mean? I mean, it sounds exciting, but you better explain.
Okay. Well, basically, when you come to us and say, hey, Meg, Tina, Judy, we want to go on an air safari, and we say, great. We sort out some time frames when you're looking to go and how many people. If you've got a group, we absolutely love to do custom tours. They're the most fun because that way we get the people to put input into where we're going.
Yeah.
And most people have a huge discovery experience when they're putting that tour together because they don't realise, as I said earlier, the diversity in Australia and the different things they can see. So that's really cool. That's a lot of fun. But typically, where we have the set tours that we run during the year and all seasons, we'll help you with the paperwork. What we do is give you links to the CASA websites, and there's 2 or 3 documents that you've got to fill out to get your transfer of your license, and then the license you'll get in Australia is a day VFR.
What is it like actually flying in Australia? I mean, I remember going to America, flying there not that long ago, and there were subtle differences like airspace or the way that they spoke on the radio. I mean, one thing we have in the UK is overhead joins, whereas in America they don't do overhead joins. Is there anything like that which catches people out?
Yeah, there's a couple of little things. A little bit of the terminology. I've actually heard air traffic controllers when they've handed you off from departure and you're off to general airspace. They'll say "Uru," and "Uru," what the heck is that? And I've actually heard a United Airline pilot in a 747 "Uru, what's Uru?" So yeah, it's like see you later on your bike.
Right,
off you go.
Oh, we'll have to start using that over here then, won't we?
Thanks to Mick for that. In fact, we've got more Aussie stuff soon, as they seem to be becoming quite a hit down under. And another quick mention, no, we don't mind if you embed fullflap.tv on your website and then put Google ads by it. Feel free. Just click on the embed link on the website for more info. We've got another Skycar for you. Expedition leader Neil Lawton and chief pilot Giles Cardozo had been getting ready to set off from London to Timbuktu, but they'd forgotten something. They didn't have permission to fly. The Skycar team are trying to part drive and part fly the 6,000 kilometres, or nearly 4,000 miles, to the Malian desert in 42 days, but they couldn't fly across the English Channel as they didn't have a licence from the UK authorities to do it. It does actually work, which is not a common feature of most Skycars. It runs on biofuel, accelerating from 0 to 100 kilometres or 60 miles per hour in 4.5 seconds. Once in the air, it'll hit around 110 kilometres an hour, which is about 70 miles per hour, cruising at about 2,000 or 3,000 feet. It sounds fun, but here's the catch. It'll cost around $73,000. Now, for a beach buggy with a parachute on top, that's not cheap. And how often will you have to untangle those parachute cords? Perhaps an even better question would be, is anyone going to buy one? That's it for this week. I have absolutely no idea what's coming up next week or even where we'll be. I think it's rather exciting. I'm Vicky Farah, you're watching fullflap.tv.